Welcome, everyone, to Circle City Conversations. Thank you for joining me for our conversation today. Thank you to our sponsor, me, or Hearst Lamontes, an Indiana law firm. We've had a lot of support, launched episode 1 a few months ago, and had some great people on the show. Today, I am pleased to welcome a very special guest, a nurse, an expert witness, an entrepreneur, and a mom, someone that I've known for a long time, my friend Abigail Stanley. Abigail, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you.
So, like I said, we've known each other for a long time. We were talking about that trial earlier. How I probably met you in 2014, right?
Probably. I started my company back in 2011, and I feel like you were one of my first clients.
Yeah. So it was probably, maybe a little bit over 10 years ago. So we've known each other a long time. So let's talk a little bit like we normally do, kind of a little bit about your background, where you're from, where'd you go to high school, stuff like that, all the fun stuff.
Gotcha. I went to Decatur High School and then for nursing school, small school in Southern Indiana, Vincennes. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and after graduating from Vincennes, you started doing clinical work, right?
Yeah. So I was an operating room nurse. I started in 2008 as an operating room nurse. So
2008, OR nurse. Did you ever have to, well, here's a question I've always wondered. Is it true that at a certain point, a nurse has to do rounds in the emergency room?
Well, I mean, I had clinicals in the emergency room, just in nursing school.
Right.
Yeah, we saw the different units throughout the hospital.
Yeah.
But no, I never worked as an ER nurse.
No. So as an OR nurse, like what was your field, your specialty?
All over. So I was at IU North and Carmel. And so, I mean, you name it, we worked on spines, and I really liked we did a lot of total knees and hips. So a lot of ortho, a lot of urology. We did IVF. I mean, you name it, they kind of did most specialties.
Yeah, that's cool. So you were able to be, have firsthand knowledge of some of those devices, that people were using to replace knees, replace shoulders.
Yes,
right?
those devices that are now in lawsuits.
Right.
Worked on both sides of it. I saw it go in the patient, and then I saw what happened. So, actually when I started my business, I worked weekend option nights in the OR. So I worked weekends so I could work the business during the weekdays.
Oh.
So on every Friday and Saturday night of my life, I was in the operating room, and it was only for emergency surgeries.
Right.
So I got to see all the chaos that happened on the weekends.
Oh my gosh. So you actually, you got to see trauma patients.
Yes. So we saw, it wasn't necessarily a trauma hospital, but we do open belly cases, so bowel obstructions, getting appendix out. A lot of stuff.
That's an emergency.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I had a buddy who, that happened to him during spring break.
Oh no.
We were in Panama City.
Yeah.
No
fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's no going back once that appendix decides to come out,
No. So, all right. So then, eventually, you're working in an OR.
Mm-hmm.
What happens that you're like, okay, I want to make a change?
So I was in the middle of one of my shifts, and there was one of the nurses was leaving. She was moving to Tennessee, and it was her last day, and they were kind of having a little goodbye party. And she says to me, you don't have any kids yet, Abby. Why don't you become a legal nurse? And I had no idea what she was talking about. I kind of thought it was made up. And so I go home and, of course, do what everybody does when you don't know. You Google. And I was like, wait a second. I'm making $30 an hour in the hospital, and you're saying I can charge $150 an hour just for the nursing knowledge. And I realized, the value of a nurse, it really varies in what field you're in and how you're working. And so I kind of started the business just as a side thing. And then I was able to leave bedside nursing altogether in a few years, just growing the business. So
you had to go get additional education, right?
I did receive a few certifications.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of that stuff was more kind of legal nurse related stuff,
Yeah. So I started out with life care planning. I received that certificate, and then Medicare set-asides, and then I received legal nursing. The interesting thing about the legal nursing, though, is that a certificate isn't necessary to do it.
Right.
Really, it's just you're a registered nurse and that's all you need. So I did receive it, but it's not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. The essential part is that you have that RN degree, right?
Right. Yeah. Same as like you hire doctors all the time on your cases. Right. They don't need a special certificate, to be, working as an expert witness. So
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. That business is called Law Nurses. Sorry, Law Nurses LLC, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you mentioned that you did some life care planning. So for people that are listening that don't really know what that is, how would you explain that to them?
So I'm plaintiff side only, and I got that a lot in the depositions and trials that I was like a hired gun. But for my heart, I wanted to still be helping people. So went from patients to plaintiffs. But we would look at an injured patient or plaintiff, and you would project their future costs based on their injury that they sustained.
Right.
So.
Right. And you would have to testify to that, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Write reports and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and when you're going through that process, is part of that process is communicating with the doctors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
And looking through the medical records and seeing, what their current treatment plan is, and talking also to the family members and to the plaintiff themselves.
Yeah. You mentioned something else, Medicare set aside. What is that?
Oh, okay. So the Medicare set aside. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I don't do the life care planning anymore either, but it's basically the Medicare portion that would be paid for from an injury. So, and because any of those the money has to be set aside for the Medicare portions. So,
yeah. So you mentioned that, before you kind of went full time, like all in on the legal nurse consulting side of it. That was what year? 2011?
Yes, that's when I started.
Okay. How long before that were you was it more of a side hustle? So
2011 is when I actually started the business. So so it was a side hustle. I stopped working as an operating room nurse in 2015.
2015.
Yeah. So it took me about 4 years to kind of get the courage enough to make the jump. I could have left sooner, but I was, nervous. You don't know if you're going to get another case and going to keep getting hired.
Well, of course. I mean, I feel like that's, I mentioned that you are an entrepreneur because you started and own your own business. And that's one of the scary things about being that person, right?
It is. Yeah. I was reading the other day that for nurses, only about 0.5 to 1% of nurses are nurse entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of different avenues for people to become entrepreneurs as nurses, like, med spas or, all different things. But it's a very small percentage of us that actually do it because we're kind of conditioned to this is what nursing is. And it's, it's taking a really kind of outside the box look at nursing.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is still the case, but there's always been a shortage, of nurses in the field. So
yes,
probably makes them, feel even further obligated to, continue. Right.
Right.
Yeah. In the clinical field. So law nurses, I know one of the things that you did with us a lot was review, looked at medical records, summarized records, did a lot of that. So let's talk about kind of the early days of law nurses. What was a lot of the services that you provided?
Exactly what you said. Usually it was going through the medical records, summarizing it so you guys don't have to go through thousands of pages and you can just condense it in a short report. I, of course, also did the cost projections for you guys and the life care plans. So, but that was the main thing is just sifting through all the medical records so you guys don't have to.
Yeah. You did these mini cost projections. I thought they were great.
Oh, yeah. I remember those. Yeah.
They really were, from a practice point of view, a great way to have the insurance company, be able to digest the fact that the client has future medical, because they want to see that number, like what is it? What are the special damages? So we can put it into our formula here so we can compute it, and so. Right. And you probably saw this all the time. That's, you saw a need for it because we're getting reports from doctors, but usually there's no numbers attached to what those medical services are going to cost in the future, and you were able to kind of fill that void there. So, but you're not doing those anymore. Right? No. So let's kind of talk about that, like the natural evolution of law nurses, from where it started and kind of where it's at now.
So in the beginning, I worked very local. I would, find you guys at, Indiana Trial Lawyer Association and market local. And in 2017, I kind of branched out and tried national marketing at different conferences. And I started going into mass tort law. And so that's where it really changed, was in 2017. I started getting into some of, like we've done thousands of reviews for Roundup and talcum powder and those types of litigations. So I kind of moved a little bit away from, I wasn't really the consultant anymore. I had a team of nurses that we were all, working together on these litigations.
Okay. So the business grew.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So how many nurses do you have now working with you guys?
Right now I have about 15.
Wow.
Yeah. And it kind of goes up and down. I always have to have a group of nurses available because it's always like project based, so it's project based scalability. We go up when we get a big project and go back down. So
yeah. So, and that, I imagine that requires you to maintain your networks.
Oh, yes.
Strong.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Especially if you get a big project, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you talked about, you mentioned ITLA conferences and, I go to them all. I'm actually still the CLE chair. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So I don't have to be there.
Right.
I don't have to, but I do have to. But what is like a difference between those conferences and, going to Mass Torts Made Perfect or something like that? Yeah.
The insanity, I would say. Well, the first time I went to Mass Torts Made Perfect, it felt a little bit like, Dorothy, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
There's a lot of craziness, So definitely didn't feel like I was around my Midwest lawyers who are so nice, There's some East Coasters and West Coasters a little crazy. So, but it's just like the sheer volume of people. You're talking about going from, ITLA, you're talking about 500 lawyers, which scared me in the beginning, and then to like 3,000 people and the amount of chaos. And it's in Las Vegas. So you keep adding more and more elements and alcohol on top of that, and it's like, it was very intimidating in the beginning, you know, just this Midwest girl trying to get, mass tort cases. So but you get used to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I remember I saw you at my first national convention like that.
Oh, at
AAJ?
AAJ? Yeah.
Yeah, and that was last year at the winter convention because I had never done anything like that. And then this past January, I went to the National Trial Lawyers Summit down in Miami Beach.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was really cool.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I grew up down there.
Right.
As a kid. Yeah. So it was just I was walking with one of the other lawyers in my office. We were walking in Collins Park in South Beach. I was like, I used to play there as a kid, Yeah, like a little kid. So, all right. So you start doing a lot more mass torts.
Yes.
Right. Are you doing the same kind of type of work, just reviewing records,
No, we switched it up. So I kind of flipped my business model upside down in 2023. So I saw a need where I kept hearing all of these years of going to Mass Torts Made Perfect. All of these marketers would say that they have qualified leads.
Yeah.
Yet when we would review the records, they weren't so qualified,
Yeah.
And so I wondered, how can you say that there's qualified when they're not? And so I decided, well, who better to start talking to plaintiffs from the very beginning than nurses, right? We understand the medical journey.
Right.
So what I decided to do is start doing marketing campaigns to actually acquire the plaintiffs. And then we do like a medical interview and kind of a screening process and do intake. And then we actually, if they qualify to a certain point, we'll order medical records and we'll do the review. Wow. So we are actually qualifying them on the front end. So lawyers don't have to worry about, did I actually, is this an actual real case? We're going, it is a real case. And we're basing it, of course, on the law firm's qualifications. We're not. But we actually are doing the actual marketing campaigns.
Wow. Look at you. My goodness. Jeez, how far we've come. Now I'm running this place,
I know.
Half the time, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. But
I couldn't remember when we first started working together if it was your firm in the beginning or were you already with Bill?
No, Bill and I worked together for years, but I actually purchased it from him in 2019.
Okay.
So
right before COVID. Right?
Yeah, before. And then I changed the name to Hearst Lamontes February of 2020.
Oh, like right before.
I rebranded right before. And then I was like, oh, this is great. But, we made it through. We got a good team of people here, that everyone believes in the mission, which is just to help as many people as we can.
Right.
Right. And so which is, you've been working with plaintiffs attorneys for a long time, and that's like a common thread,
Should be, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it should be, right? Right. Well, maybe for me, maybe I'm just too.
No, you were always cared an enormous amount about your clients. I always appreciated that about you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about, you've got this project now. I'm trying to find the name here.
Legal Nurse Secrets.
Yes, Legal Nurse Secrets. That's right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So one of the nurses that I've been lucky enough to work alongside with law nurses, my educator, she helped me build out the education and the training for the nurses on all these different litigations, because we've worked on like 40 different mass tort litigations. And, they're all similar, but they're all different. And so she helped me train the nurses. And she actually had her own really successful legal nurse consulting business herself, but she's near retirement age, and she decided to kind of just come with me with law nurses and let her successful business, kind of retire from there. Well, then one day we were on the phone and we're like, man, these nurses really need a lot of help. They're not really getting this, and we're like, what if we started a training program where we taught them kind of everything that we had to learn on our end to have a successful legal nurse consulting company?
Yeah.
So that's how Legal Nurse Secrets began. So my educator and I from Law Nurses started Legal Nurse Secrets, and it actually just launched in January of this year, where we're actually building out courses and kind of teaching everything. It's been interesting to get everything out of our minds and onto, paper, and actually going, okay, how did we do what we did?
Yeah.
So all different aspects, actual like marketing to attorneys, which seems to be like the most difficult aspect for a lot of nurses, because, they're not used to selling themselves. Nurses, you can pretty much probably wear pajamas to an interview and be hired as a nurse. And so, and to try to convince, you guys aren't exactly the easiest people to convince, Yeah. And so we're teaching everything from marketing to how to actually like walking them through doing a review, writing the various types of reports, and, everything, everything, nuts and bolts.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So when I gave that list at the beginning of the program, I should have added marketer and educator as well.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Yeah, congratulations. Good for you. So now that is that like online based, or how does that work?
Yes, it's all online based.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So like video training, online training, stuff like that.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. So any, nurse across the country.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Could potentially.
Yeah, we did. We actually had a nurse that was in Australia the other day. And I was like, oh, that was interesting. I mean, she's from the U.S., but she's because that's the thing about legal nursing. You can do it from. I have a nurse right now working for me that's in Guam because her husband's stationed there. And it's like, you can do it from anywhere as long as you have Wi-Fi and laptop.
Exactly.
So
that's fantastic. So, oh my gosh, hopefully you guys get a massive burst in the legal nursing field.
Yes, we're hoping. I mean, it's not like we're not trying to take nurses away from the field or anything.
Right.
We just want nurses to understand there is a work-life balance they can achieve because, as coming from someone that used to, most of my 20s, I was Friday and Saturday nights in the operating room.
Right.
It holidays and weekends and all that, it's draining. And so if nurses can, even if they drop one shift and they can use their knowledge in a different way, I think it's can really help nurses.
Yeah. And that was what I was actually going to say. Like, this is not something that you have to commit to 40 hours a week, or 7, even whatever, you can, if you still want to do, clinical work, you can do both and have that balance, right?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of balance, I mentioned you're a mom.
Yes.
So like, what are some of the things you do to find that balance as, clearly a successful business person and entrepreneur, and then still be a mom?
Well, that's the wonderful thing. Like with legal nurse consulting, you can just adjust your schedule, right? Yeah. I mean, same as you, you can put them to bed and then you could pick up the work if you want in the evening. It's so nice versus, a 12-hour shift. Right. I luckily was out of nursing prior to having my daughter. Yeah. But, if you do work a 12-hour shift, you kind of miss an entire day of your kid's life for a little one, right? You leave before they get up, they're asleep before you get home. Yeah. And so I can, go visit her and have lunch with her at her school if I can manipulate my schedule, Yeah. So every Thursday, we always have our Mama Charlotte date every Thursday. I pick her from school and we go do whatever adventure she wants to do that day. So it is really nice. And the weekends, which I was not used to in nursing,
Yeah.
So
Right.
it really does allow for balance. And not that I haven't in the business had my crazy times when I was growing it, but it's still, you can manipulate it, even, chaos when after she goes to bed and try to, lose sleep, but not lose time as a mother,
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, even like, I mentioned to you, I was at the NTL summit,
right.
and I missed, a few days with my family, but then just trying to make that up, as much as you can.
Yes.
When you do have that time. That's what my wife always tells me. She's a saint. She's a saint because she married me. That's why, So lawyers, and that's going to be another question for you. You mentioned, we have big egos. We do. It's tough, and you try to suppress it as much as you can. But, it's at the end of the day, it's just, I think, part of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, to do what you guys do, it makes sense for you guys to have an ego. I mean, no one wants to get up and do what you guys do.
It can be tough. I was talking to, we sponsored that Indie Bar's Got Talent show this past weekend, which was great. And my friend Tim Devereaux was there. You know Tim?
Oh yeah, I know Tim.
And I was talking to him and his wife, Karen, and I analogized it to like someone like having all of these horrible emotions and feelings, and then they just funnel it right into you as the lawyer. And you have to try to bear that emotional burden with them, as best as you can, and then guide them through a process that, let's be honest, the laws in Indiana especially are not easy.
No.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit now kind of about, like moving forward, like what's next for you guys. So.
Well, I mean, we just started Legal Nurse Secrets, so I still have a lot to build out there. I'm going to, the interesting thing about legal nurse consulting is there's really no mass torts. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot. Most people, when they think of a legal nurse, they think of medical malpractice.
Right.
They think about personal injury. They really do not think about mass torts. And so that doesn't exist at all in terms of training. So I have a ton of information to train on that. So really right now is Legal Nurse Secrets is trying to build out everything that I possibly can.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about, lawyers were tough. Now you are a female business owner in essentially servicing an industry that's heavily male dominated.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges, kind of associated with?
Getting hit on.
Because you want them to hire you, but yeah, I know.
Yeah. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. The insanity at mass torts made perfect. They just, and the egos, like you said, I mean,
Big egos.
Yes, they just think they know everything. And that's, it's difficult when you have someone that thinks like they did not go to medical school. They did not, they're not a nurse. They didn't go to nursing school. They just think they already know, like they already know what's in the records. They already know. And it's like, but even if you can be the most skilled at reviewing the medical records, do you have the time and energy to dedicate to that? You know?
Exactly.
And it's sometimes difficult convincing them of the need, or that they say, well, I can ship that to India and for, a penny a page and, and get a 2,000 page report. I mean, I've seen some of the reports, when you offshore and now, of course, we're up against AI.
Right.
AI.
Right.
So, and I've seen, the amount of things missed. I think the thing that gets me is these poor plaintiffs. Like, even if you're not hiring nurses, like take me out of it. It's the plaintiffs that are being told that they don't have a case when they do. Yeah. Right. Or that their case is worth X, but 17, complications were missed. And it's that type of thing that it's like, that's just not fair to them for you to save $1. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, you're absolutely right. A lawyer's time is best spent doing the legal work on the case. Right. And when you have, some of these cases, you can sit down, you can review records, and kind of put a demand together. I don't think that a nurse is necessarily required in every case, Oh,
of course
not.
But
certainly the complicated ones. Yeah. Anything mass torts related, because there's so much complicated medicine and science behind it. I mean, I feel like you have to have someone like that.
Yeah. And there's just the volume alone. Like, some firms have thousands of cases, and it's like, how are you going to get through those, Yeah. So, or how's their staff?
So the side of your business where you're helping screen cases and do plaintiff acquisition, is that more single event kind of accident cases, or all kinds of cases, or specific to mass torts?
Specific to mass tort so far,
Okay.
but I've started building a team of labor and delivery nurses to help with birth injury
cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was going to be the next thing that I was going to try to do some marketing campaigns, because again, the main litigation we've been working on from the plaintiff acquisition part is the baby formula neck litigation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these poor mothers, I can't fathom it myself. Like if we've had multiple babies that have died. And so kind of who better to talk to them than a nurse? And then what I use is actual NICU nurses. So it's people that really do understand the NICU journey that their baby went through. And so we've already kind of gotten used to speaking with plaintiffs, like the mothers and fathers and family members of for these neck cases. And so I thought maybe next we'd do birth injury.
Yeah. That's really great. And that actually hits home for me. You know, my oldest was in the NICU for 12 days. Yeah. Because he was born a little bit early, and like for 12 days, I cried driving home every day.
Yeah. Frightening. I mean,
every day. Yeah. And it was kind of an open NICU. So there was actually a baby that was there, and the parents were there, and the baby passed away. And my wife was there with our oldest, Franco. She just called me like bawling. Like it was just terrible, you know, but, you know, you have the ability to bring that perspective, people that have worked lived it.
Yeah. And what's so sad about that litigation is like, it's preventable.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents have no say. That's what's really scary, is like, they can just give your baby the fortifier or the formula, and you don't have a say. There's no consent. There's no, it's just, that's their current standards.
Wow.
You know?
Wow. We were chatting earlier about a case that we worked on many, many years ago. Car accident case. Great client. And that was one of those many cost summaries.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah. The cost projections.
So it was, and it evolved into something more detail oriented when the defense attorney was getting pretty aggressive with. So I do have to say,
that's not the word I would use for her.
You did. Was that your first trial?
That's
Testifying.
been my first trial, my only trial, actually.
What?
I did like 10 depositions. And what I found interesting was that the depositions were harder than the trial, because she had to play a tiny bit nicer in front of the jury.
Right.
Tiny bit.
Right.
But that was my only trial.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, and one and done. And, you know, that was a great case. I think, did I tell you what happened?
Oh, what?
So it was $100,000 policy, and that's all we could get. So we asked the jury for the 100, and they gave us $200,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The defense attorney, she was not happy.
Oh, can't imagine.
Yeah. So I love it. So that's the only time she moved to strike you, and we fought that off. And then you were able to testify, and that's probably the only time. Is that going to be the only time you're going to probably ever testify?
Knock on wood. Hopefully all the cases are all settled by now. That was not, I know that there's some, expert witnesses that just live for it. They just, they thrive. Not my favorite to have someone rip me apart on stand. So.
No, it's tough, right?
Yes.
That's why nobody really, a lot of people don't want to do it. You know?
I know.
I mean, I have a lot of Spanish speaking clients. I was talking to one of my associates. I mean, we can't find a Spanish speaking, IME doctor.
Yeah.
In Indiana.
Wow.
In Indiana. Yeah.
Don't want to do it.
Yeah. So if there's any Spanish speaking doctors out there that, want to, maybe kind of do get away from the clinical side.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine that's so stressful. What we do is stressful, obviously, but this is that stuff.
You're right. Right.
Yeah. So
you helped me an enormous amount, though. Out of all, so like I said, I think I had about 10 depositions and then the one trial. You were the only lawyer that actually took the time. You made that outline for me and actually kind of taught me the game of it. I didn't really, I'm not a lawyer. That's the thing. It's I think sometimes people take for granted the knowledge that they have, and they think it's common knowledge. And none of the other lawyers that I worked with would took the time to kind of prep me in that way.
Right.
Some of them didn't prep me at all. And you actually took the time to make an outline. And it's I had 3 depositions after that trial, and they were so easy in comparison to anything that I did just because of you. So thank you so much.
Good. Well, that's important to have. A lot of lawyers overlook that you've got an expert witness or an expert, but they're not an expert at testifying in trial,
Totally different.
And that's a totally different kind of mindset, and so some people will just walk into it. They're just yeah, I'll take your video at your in your office, and they're just completely unprepared,
Yes.
And so especially if you have a tough defense attorney on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you did amazing. I mean, she came at you.
She did. She did. She was not a nice person.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So, but you did a great job. I just thought it was it's like when you're watching your kids, for example, and something's bothering them and they're getting distracted with it. It was almost what do they call it? Almost like gaslighting, that's kind of where that was her approach.
Oh, totally.
To your cross-examination. And you just stayed right in your lane. And I love that. And nothing pisses off a gaslighter more than just staying right in your lane, So I love it. I love it. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you so much. You'll have to come back again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Maybe in the future we can talk a little bit more about, where you're going with the education side. I love that. I love that education piece. That's so great. So thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Circle City Conversations podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more future conversations.